I was halfway through unpacking a box of cookware when someone knocked on my door. It was a Wednesday night in late August. The kind of humid Chicago evening where the air sits heavy on your skin and every sound feels muffled by heat. My apartment was still mostly boxes. I'd been in the city for 2 weeks, maybe 3. Long enough to find the nearest grocery store and figure out which train line didn't smell like urine. Not long enough to feel like I lived here. The knock came again. 3 taps, evenly spaced. Polite. Uncertain. I set down the saucepan I'd been holding and wiped my hands on my jeans. My first thought was that it was probably my landlord coming to ask about the lease addendum I hadn't signed yet. Or maybe Simone, my best friend from college, who'd helped me move in and kept threatening to come back with housewarming wine I didn't want. I opened the door, and then I stopped breathing. Lionel Vega stood in the hallway. He was wearing a faded denim jacket over a gray t-shirt, his backpack slung over one shoulder like he'd just gotten off a bus. His dark hair was longer than I remembered, falling into his eyes the way it used to during late-night editing sessions when he'd lean too close to the monitor and I'd have to remind myself to focus on the work. He had the same sheepish half-smile I used to think about when I couldn't sleep. The one that said he knew he shouldn't be here, but couldn't quite bring himself to leave. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My mind was doing that thing where it lags behind reality, where the present moment becomes so impossible that your brain refuses to process it. The last time I saw Lionel was 3 months ago. Graduation night. A rooftop party at someone's off-campus house. The kind of place where the stairs creaked and the railings felt dangerously loose. We'd both had a few drinks. Not enough to be drunk. Just enough to be honest. We kissed. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. We were standing near the edge of the roof, looking out at the campus lights. And he turned to me and said something I can't even remember now. Something about how he wished we'd done this sooner. And then his hand was on my jaw and his mouth was on mine, and for 30 seconds the entire world narrowed to that single point of contact. When we pulled apart, we just looked at each other. I remember thinking that I should say something, do something, make this mean what it felt like it meant. But before I could, someone called his name from inside. He squeezed my hand once. Then he was gone. I didn't see him the next day, or the day after that. By the time I realized he wasn't coming back, he'd already left town. No text, no call, no explanation. Simone saw us kiss. She never asked about it. I think she knew I didn't want to talk about something that felt so enormous and so fragile at the same time. Something that might disappear completely if I tried to put it into words. Now Lionel was standing in my doorway, 3 months later, in a city I'd moved to specifically because it was far enough away that I wouldn't accidentally run into anyone from school. Far enough away to start over. I realized I'd been staring at him for too long without speaking. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. The smile flickered. He looked nervous. I'd never seen him nervous before. I heard my own voice, thin and breathless like someone else was using it. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. He exhaled slowly. I watched his shoulders drop half an inch. He said, "I'm not sure I thought I'd let you." There was a long pause. Someone walked past us in the hallway, keys jangling, and disappeared into another apartment. A door closed somewhere above us. The building settled into its evening sounds. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I kept them at my sides, fingers curling into my palms. I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to slam the door. I wanted to ask him why he was here and how he found me and what the hell he thought he was doing showing up like this, unannounced, like he had any right to stand in my hallway after 3 months of silence. Instead, I just stood there. He looked past me into the apartment, at the boxes, at the half-assembled furniture, at the life I was trying to build without him. "Can I come in?" he said. It wasn't really a question. I stepped aside. He walked past me, and I caught the scent of him. Laundry detergent and something earthy like cedar or rain-soaked pavement. The same smell I used to associate with those long nights in the editing lab when we'd sit side by side, shoulders touching, rewatching the same 30-second clip until we both saw something the other one missed. I closed the door behind him and leaned against it. My heart was doing something erratic in my chest. Lionel stood in the center of my living room, hands in his pockets, looking around like he was trying to memorize the space. "Nice place," he said. "It's a mess," I said. He turned to look at me. His eyes were the same, dark brown, almost black in certain light. The kind of eyes that made you feel seen in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. "I missed you," he said. The words landed between us like something physical, something I could almost reach out and touch. I didn't believe him, or maybe I didn't want to believe him, because if I believed him, then I had to believe that he'd spent 3 months missing me and still chose not to call, still chose to disappear, still chose to leave me standing on that rooftop, alone, wondering if I'd imagined the whole thing. I crossed my arms over my chest. "You have a funny way of showing it." He flinched, just slightly, but I saw it. "I know," he said. We stood there in my half-unpacked apartment, two people who used to know how to talk to each other, suddenly unable to find the words. Outside, a siren wailed past. The window was open and the humid air drifted in, carrying the distant sounds of the city I was still learning to call home. Lionel shifted his backpack off his shoulder and let it drop to the floor. The thud of it felt significant, like an anchor, like he was planning to stay. I'd moved to Chicago 6 weeks earlier with 2 suitcases and a portfolio of paintings I'd never shown anyone. The apartment was a studio in Logan Square, 3rd floor, with windows that faced east, so the morning light came in sharp and unforgiving. It was the first place I'd ever lived alone. The first place that was entirely mine. My official reason for coming here was the job. Teaching assistant position at a charter school on the north side. Art classes for middle schoolers who didn't care about perspective or color theory, but sometimes surprised me with how they saw the world. It wasn't what I'd imagined doing after graduation, but it was something. A paycheck. A reason to wake up in the morning. The real reason I came to Chicago was that it was far enough away. Far enough from campus, from the coffee shop where Lionel and I used to meet between classes, from the editing lab where we'd spend entire nights arguing about shot composition and whether Truffaut was overrated. Far enough from the rooftop where we kissed and everything became impossible. I hadn't told anyone I was leaving until 2 weeks before the move. My parents thought I was being impulsive. Simone said I was running away. She wasn't wrong, but she didn't push it. She helped me pack instead, folding my clothes into neat squares while I wrapped paintings in newspaper and tried not to think about what I was leaving behind. I didn't talk about Lionel. Not to her. Not to anyone. There wasn't much to say. We were never together, not officially. We were teammates in a film theory seminar our junior year. The kind of class where you got paired up randomly and either learned to work together or failed. We got lucky, or unlucky, depending on how you looked at it. He was good at editing. Patient with the technical details, I found tedious. I was better at the conceptual stuff, the why behind the what. We balanced each other. Our final project got screened at the end-of-year showcase. Afterward, people asked if we were going to keep collaborating. We said maybe. We said we'd see. What we didn't say was that every editing session had started feeling like something else. That the space between us kept shrinking. That sometimes I'd look up from the monitor and find him already looking at me, and neither of us would look away fast enough. Senior year, we had different schedules, different projects. We still saw each other, but less. Coffee here and there. A few texts. Nothing substantial. I told myself it was better that way. Safer. Then graduation happened. The rooftop. The kiss. And then nothing. I checked my phone obsessively for a week. Then I stopped. I told myself I was being ridiculous. That it was just a kiss. That it didn't mean what I wanted it to mean. But some part of me stayed stuck on that rooftop, waiting for him to come back. Moving to Chicago was supposed to fix that. New city, new life, new version of myself that didn't spend hours wondering what I'd done wrong. It was working mostly. I had the teaching job. I had the apartment. I'd set up a corner by the window as a makeshift studio. Nothing fancy, just an easel and some supplies I brought from home. At night, after unpacking boxes or grading assignments, I'd paint. Small canvases, abstract shapes, colors that didn't mean anything except how I felt when I mixed them. I hadn't shown the paintings to anyone. They weren't finished. Or maybe I just wasn't ready to let anyone see them. There was something too raw about them, too honest. Like if someone looked closely enough, they'd see everything I was trying not to say. Simone called every few days to check in. She'd ask how the job was going, if I made any friends, whether I was eating actual meals or just surviving on coffee and takeout. I give her the easy answers, the ones that made it sound like I had everything under control. She never asked about Lionel. I think she knew that if she did, I'd either lie or fall apart, and neither of us wanted that. So I didn't talk about him. I pretended those late-night editing sessions had never happened. I pretended the kiss was just a blip, a moment of drunken confusion that didn't deserve the space it was taking up in my head. I pretended I'd moved on, and then he knocked on my door. Now he was standing in my living room, backpack on the floor, looking at me like he was trying to figure out if I was real. Like maybe he'd been imagining me too. I should have asked him to leave. Should have told him that showing up unannounced after 3 months of silence wasn't okay. That I'd spent weeks trying to forget him and he had no right to walk back into my life like this. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I walked to the kitchen area, filled the kettle, and set on the stove. My hands were shaking slightly. I hope he couldn't see. "Do you want tea?" I said. He nodded. "Yeah, that'd be good." I heard him move behind me. Footsteps across the hardwood. The creak of him sitting down on the floor near the window, right where I'd been painting the night before. Neither of us said anything while we waited for the water to boil. The kettle screamed, and I poured hot water over 2 tea bags in mismatched mugs. One was from a museum gift shop, the other from a diner I'd stopped at during the drive to Chicago. I brought them over and sat down on the floor across from him, leaving a careful distance between us. He wrapped his hands around the mug and stared into it like it held answers. I waited. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. Finally, he spoke. "I'm in town for a job interview." The words came out flat, rehearsed, like he'd been practicing them. I took a sip of tea. It burned my tongue. "Okay, tomorrow morning. Marketing position at some tech startup in the Loop. I don't know much about it yet. The recruiter reached out last month. He was talking too fast, not meeting my eyes. I set my mug down on the floor between us. "How did you find me?" He looked up then. "Simone." Something cold settled in my chest. "Simone gave you my address." He shook his head quickly. "No, not exactly. I asked her if you were okay. She said you'd moved to Chicago. I didn't ask for the address. I looked you up, found you on social media. You posted a photo last week from that coffee shop on Milwaukee Avenue. I recognized the intersection, so you tracked me down." He flinched. "When you say it like that, it sounds like what it is," I said. The silence stretched between us. Outside, someone was playing music, bass-heavy and muffled through the walls. A car alarm went off and then stopped. Lionel set his mug down. "I know this is weird, showing up like this. I know I don't have the right to just..." He stopped, rubbed his face with both hands. "I wasn't sure I was going to knock. I stood outside your building for 20 minutes trying to decide. But you did knock." "Yeah, I did. Why?" He looked at me then. Really looked at me. The way he used it during those editing sessions when we'd hit a wall and couldn't figure out how to fix a scene. Like if he stared long enough, the answer would appear. "Because I haven't stopped thinking about you," he said. "Because I wake up every morning and the first thing I remember is that rooftop. Because I've started 100 texts and deleted all of them. Because I convinced myself that if I just saw you one more time, I could figure out if what I felt that night was real or if I'd built it up into something it wasn't." My throat felt tight. "You could have called." "I know. You could have texted. You could have done literally anything other than disappear." "I know. So why didn't you?" He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that I thought maybe he wasn't going to answer. Then he said, "I wasn't ready for what I felt." I panicked. The honesty in his voice made something crack open inside me. Some wall I'd been building for 3 months. "You could have told me that," I said. "You could have said you needed time or space or whatever. Instead, you just left. Do you know what that did to me? Do you know how many times I replayed that night, trying to figure out what I did wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. Then why did you leave?" "Because I was terrified," he said. His voice broke slightly on the last word. "Because I spent my whole life being careful. Not getting too close. Not wanting too much. And then I kissed you and it was like," he stopped. Shook his head. "It was like everything I'd been avoiding was suddenly right in front of me and I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice." He stood up. The movement was sudden, like he couldn't sit still anymore. He walked to the window and looked out at the street below. "I should go. I shouldn't have come. I just needed to see you once. To know I didn't imagine it." I watched him. The line of his shoulders. The way his hand gripped the window frame. The same hands that had held my face when he kissed me. Part of me wanted to let him walk out, wanted to protect myself from whatever this was going to become. Part of me had already started building the story I'd tell myself later, about how he showed up and left again and proved that I was right to move away. But there was another part of me, the part that had spent 3 months half alive, the part that still reached for my phone in the middle of the night hoping to see his name, the part that had kissed him back on that rooftop and meant it. He moved toward the door, picked up his backpack. I heard myself say, "Stay, just a little longer." He stopped, turned around slowly. I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes on my tea, watching the steam rise and dissipate. "Please," I said. And he stayed. He stayed that night, and the next, and the one after that. It wasn't something we discussed. It just happened. Thursday morning, I made coffee, and he was still there, sitting on my floor with his laptop open, researching the company he was interviewing with. Friday evening, I came home from work and found him at the corner store on the first floor buying bread and eggs. By Saturday, we'd fallen into a rhythm that felt too natural to be new. We didn't talk about what we were doing. We didn't define it or question it. We just existed in the same space, cautious and careful, like we were both afraid that naming it would make it disappear. Saturday morning, we walked to the coffee shop I'd posted about, the one he'd recognized. It was a 20-minute walk through streets I was still learning, past buildings covered in murals and vintage shops that weren't open yet. The air was cooler than it had been all week, almost pleasant. He told me about the places he'd been since graduation. A month in Portland staying with a friend from high school. 2 weeks in Denver with his cousin. Back home to his parents' place in Arizona for a few weeks before he couldn't stand it anymore. He made it sound like an adventure, but I could hear the aimlessness underneath. The searching. None of it stuck, he said. I kept thinking I'd find something that felt right, but everywhere I went I just felt like I was waiting. For what? I said. He looked at me. I didn't know then. I think I do now. I didn't ask him to elaborate. I wasn't ready for that conversation yet. We ordered coffee and sat outside, even though it was starting to get hot. He asked about the teaching job. I told him about my students, about the girl who only painted in shades of blue and the boy who turned every assignment into something related to video games, about how exhausting it was and how sometimes it felt worth it. "Do you like it?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I said. "Ask me in 6 months. That night, I showed him the paintings. I hadn't planned to. We were sitting on the floor, eating takeout from the Thai place down the block when he asked what I'd been working on. I almost deflected, almost said nothing important. But something about the way he asked made me want to show him. They were stacked against the wall by the window. Maybe 8 or 9 of them. Small canvases, most of them unfinished. Abstract shapes and colors I couldn't name. Some of them felt angry. Some of them felt lost. He stood up and walked over to them slowly. Crouched down to look at each one. He didn't say anything for a long time. I stood behind him, suddenly self-conscious. They're not done. They're just experiments, really. I don't even know if they're good. He touched the edge of one canvas. Careful, like it might break. "These are incredible. You don't have to say that." He looked up at me. "I'm not just saying it. Reese, these are..." He shook his head. "You can see everything in these. Everything you're feeling. It's all right here." Something in my chest tightened. I sat down next to him. I don't show people my work usually. Why not? Because it feels like showing them something I can't take back. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "Thank you for showing me." Sunday, we didn't leave the apartment. We put on music. Old jazz records I found at a thrift store, scratchy and warm. We talked about films we'd seen, books we'd read, things that didn't matter but somehow did. He told me about his family. His older sister who was getting married in the fall. His parents who'd never quite understood why he studied film instead of something practical. I told him about mine. About growing up in a town where everyone knew everyone and leaving felt like betrayal. About my mother who wanted me to be a teacher but wished it was at a real school. About my father who asked when I was going to have a real art show, like the paintings I made in my bedroom didn't count. We sat on the fire escape as the sun went down. The city stretched out below us, lights beginning to flicker on building by building. It reminded me of that rooftop, the one we never talked about. "Why me?" I said. The question came out before I could stop it. He turned to look at me. "What do you mean?" "I mean, there were other people, other options. Why did you kiss me that night? Why are you here now?" He was quiet. Then he said, "Because you're the only person I ever kissed," and immediately wanted to do it again. My breath caught. Because every time I try to move on or move forward or whatever, I kept coming back to you, he said. Because I've never felt with anyone else what I felt in 30 seconds on that rooftop. The city hummed below us. Sirens and voices and the distant rumble of the train. He leaned closer. Can I kiss you again? I nodded. Yes. This time when we kissed, it didn't feel stolen or uncertain or like something that would disappear at dawn. It felt inevitable. It felt like coming home. Monday morning came too fast. I woke up to find Lionel already dressed, standing by the window with his phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking quietly, professionally, the way you talk to people who might hire you. He caught my eye and held up one finger. Almost done. I made coffee while he finished the call, poured it into 2 mugs and waited. When he hung up, he looked tired. The interview is at 11. Downtown. You nervous? I asked. He took the coffee I offered. A little. The job sounds good. Really good, actually. Better than I expected. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I ignored it. That's great. We sat at the small table by the window, the one I'd found on the curb 2 weeks ago, and dragged up 3 flights of stairs. Outside, the city was waking up. People heading to work, kids waiting for the school bus, someone walking 3 dogs at once. He left at 10. Said he needed to find the building, didn't want to be late. I told him good luck. He kissed me quickly, like it was something we'd been doing for years, and then he was gone. I had the day off, Teacher Development Day, which meant I was supposed to attend workshops about classroom management and trauma-informed teaching. Instead, I stayed home, tried to paint, stared at a blank canvas for an hour, and couldn't figure out where to start. He texted me at 1. Interview went well. Grabbing lunch. Back soon. I read the message 3 times looking for subtext that wasn't there. He came back around 3 carrying takeout containers and a careful expression. We ate on the floor like we had every other day. He told me about the interview, the people he'd met, the office with the view of the lake, how they'd asked him to do a 2nd round of interviews tomorrow. That's good, I said. That means they're interested. Yeah. He pushed rice around his container with a fork. The thing is, it's not in Chicago. The words landed like a fist to my chest. What? The position is in Minneapolis. I thought it was here. The recruiter said Chicago, but I guess I misunderstood. The company has offices in both cities. This one is Minneapolis. I set my food down, carefully, like if I moved too fast something would shatter. So you came here knowing you were leaving again? No. He looked up sharply. I came here thinking the job was here. I came here thinking I could stay. I didn't know until this morning. The apartment felt too small suddenly. Too warm. I stood up and walked to the window, needing space, needing air. Reese. I heard him stand. Felt him move closer. You came here to say goodbye again, I said. My voice came out flat. Empty. That's not what this is. Then what is it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly the same. You show up, we have a few perfect days, and then you leave. Again. I came here to see if I could stay, he said. His voice was louder now. Urgent. I came here because I needed to know if what I felt was real. And it is. You're real. This is real. But I also need a job, Reese. I need to figure out my life. I turned around. And I'm not part of that. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. We stood there in my apartment, 3 feet apart, everything we weren't saying filling the space between us. He ran his hand through his hair. The same gesture he used to make during editing sessions when we couldn't get scene right. Can we talk about this? Please. What's there to talk about? You're taking the job. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But you will. Because it's a good opportunity and you need work. And what are you going to do? Turn it down to stay in a city where you don't have anything except me. Is that really so impossible? He said quietly. I looked at him. At the boy I'd spent 3 months trying to forget. The one who'd kissed me on a rooftop and disappeared. The one who'd shown up at my door 4 days ago and made me believe that maybe this time could be different. I don't want to be the reason you give up your future, I said. You're not. You're the reason I want to figure out what my future looks like. We didn't speak for a while. The silence was different this time. Heavier. More honest. Finally, he said, I don't want to leave you again without trying. That's all I know. I don't have all the answers. I don't know what happens next. But I know I don't want to walk away from this. From what? I said. We've known each other for 4 days. Well, for days again. That's not enough to build a life on. Maybe not. But it's something. I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that 4 days could matter. That a kiss on a rooftop 3 months ago could be worth turning down a job for. But I'd spent too long teaching myself not to hope for things that didn't make sense. He stayed that night, but we didn't sleep close. We lay on opposite sides of my bed, careful not to touch, both of us staring at the ceiling. I listened to him breathe and wondered if this was how it ended. Again, Tuesday morning, Lionel left early for his second interview. He didn't wake me. I heard the door close and lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to decide if I should feel relieved or devastated. I went to work, taught 3 classes on color theory to students who mostly scrolled through their phones when they thought I wasn't looking. During lunch, I sat in the art room alone and thought about what it would feel like when he left. How quiet the apartment would be. How I'd have to learn all over again to stop waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. Simone called around 2. I almost didn't answer. "You're avoiding me," she said when I picked up. "I'm at work. It's Tuesday. You're done by 1 on Tuesdays." "I'm grading." "You hate grading. What's wrong?" I looked around the empty classroom. "Nothing." "Reese." I exhaled. "Lionel's here. In Chicago. He showed up last week." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I know. You know. He called me a month ago. Asked if you were okay. If you mentioned him. I told him you'd moved to Chicago. I didn't think he'd actually come." "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to give you hope if he wasn't going to follow through. Because I didn't want to watch you get hurt again." "Too late," I said. She sighed. "Where is he now?" "Job interview. In Minneapolis." "He's leaving." "Is he?" "What do you mean, is he?" "The job's not here. He has to leave." "Does he?" she said. "Or does he have to choose?" "There's a difference." I didn't say anything. "Look," she said. "I watched you spend 3 months pretending you were fine. I helped you pack up your entire life and move to a new city because you couldn't stand being in the same place where you kissed him. So don't tell me this doesn't matter. Don't tell me you're just going to let him walk away without saying what you actually want." "What I want doesn't change reality," I said. "Maybe not, but at least you'd know you tried." After he hung up, I sat there for a long time. Then I left school early, took the train downtown, found the hotel where Lionel said he was staying. A mid-range place near the Magnificent Mile, the kind with generic art on the walls, and a lobby that smelled like carpet cleaner. I texted him, "What room are you in?" He responded immediately, 412. "Interview just ended. Everything okay?" I didn't answer, just took the elevator to the 4th floor and knocked on his door. He opened it still wearing the button-down shirt from the interview, sleeves rolled up, looking confused and worried. "Reese, what are you doing here?" I walked past him into the room. It was small and impersonal. Bed still made. His backpack on the desk. Jacket thrown over a chair. I turned around. "You don't have to choose between me and your future. But I want to be part of it." He stared at me. "What?" "I'm not asking you to turn down the job. I'm not asking you to stay in Chicago just because I'm here. But I'm also not going to pretend the last week didn't happen. I'm not going to pretend that what I feel for you is something I can just walk away from." "Reese, let me finish." I spent 3 months convincing myself that kiss didn't mean anything, that you didn't mean anything. And then you showed up, and everything I'd been trying to bury came back. Every feeling, every stupid hope. And I can't do this again. I can't watch you leave and spend the next 3 months wondering if I should have said something. He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "So I'm saying it now," I continued. "I want you in my life. I don't know what that looks like. Maybe it's long distance. Maybe it's me visiting Minneapolis on weekends. Maybe it's you turning down this job and finding something here. I don't have it figured out, but I know I don't want to lose you again without at least trying." The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning unit. Then Lionel walked to the desk, picked up a piece of paper, and handed it to me. It was a resume. His resume. I recognized his name at the top, his email address, the list of projects and experience I'd heard about over the years. At the very top, in small letters, it said, Chicago-based. I looked up at him. "What is this?" He smiled. A real smile this time. Not sheepish or uncertain. Just open. "It's my revised resume. The one I'm sending out tonight. To every company in Chicago that might hire me." "But the job?" I told him no. An hour ago. The position was good, but it wasn't worth leaving again. Not when I finally found what I've been looking for. I stared at the paper in my hands. "You turned it down." "Yeah. For me. For us," he said. I already did choose, Reese. I chose the minute I knocked on your door. I just needed to know you'd meet me halfway. I looked at him, at the person who'd disappeared and come back, who'd been terrified and stayed anyway, who'd chosen me when he could have chosen the easier path. I kissed him, and this time it didn't feel stolen or inevitable or like anything except exactly what it was. A beginning. 3 weeks later, I woke up to sunlight coming through the windows and the smell of coffee. Lionel was in the kitchen area, still in the t-shirt he'd slept in, pouring water into mugs. He'd figured out how I like my coffee. Too much milk, no sugar. He made his black. Morning, he said when he saw me watching him. Morning. It was a Saturday. My first weekend without a stack of ungraded assignments. His third interview that week, this one at a production company in Wicker Park. Small operation, mostly commercial work, but they needed an editor and the pay was decent. We sat by the window with our coffee. The same spot where we'd sat that first night when I didn't know if I should let him stay. Now, there were 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom. His clothes mixed with mine in the closet. His laptop next to mine on a makeshift desk we'd built from milk crates and plywood. It had happened gradually. He'd stayed at the hotel for 2 more nights, then asked if he could crash on my floor while he looked for a sublet. The floor became the bed. The temporary stay became something we stopped putting a timeline on. We hadn't talked about what we were doing, hadn't defined it with labels or promises. We were just 2 people in their early 20s figuring out how to exist in the same space without running away. How are you feeling about today? I asked. Nervous. Good nervous, though. I think this one could actually work. I hope it does. He looked at me over his coffee. Me, too. After he left for the interview, I went to my corner by the window. The makeshift studio that was slowly becoming something real. I've been working on a new painting for the last week. Larger than the others. More intentional. It was a portrait, sort of abstract enough that you couldn't make out features, but the suggestion was there. 2 figures overlapping. One in warm tones, burnt orange and deep red. The other in cooler shades, navy and gray blue. Where they met, the colors mixed into something I couldn't name. In the center, barely visible unless you looked closely, I'd painted hands. His hands, actually, though I hadn't told him that. Holding a Polaroid camera. The kind we'd used in that film theory class where we first met. The kind that gave you instant proof that a moment had existed. Inside the frame of the camera, I'd painted that rooftop. Simplified. Just the suggestion of a skyline and 2 silhouettes standing close together. I've been working on it in pieces. A little each night after he fell asleep. It was the most personal thing I'd ever made. The kind of painting that scared me because it meant something I couldn't take back. But I kept working on it anyway. Lionel came back around noon. He walked in with his shoulders looser, his smile easier. Well, I said, they offer me the job. Start Monday. I set down my brush. Really? Really? He laughed, and it was the first time I'd heard him laugh like that, without holding anything back. They want me to edit a series of shorts for a local restaurant group. It's not glamorous, but it's work. It's here. I walked over and hugged him. He smelled like coffee and the laundromat detergent we'd started buying together. Like home. That night we ordered pizza and ate it on the fire escape. The weather was getting colder. Fall settling into the city in earnest. Below us, the street was busy with Saturday night energy. People heading to bars, to dinners, to wherever people go when they're young and the night is still full of possibility. I have something to show you, I said. He followed me inside. I led him to the corner where the painting sat on the easel, still wet in places. He stopped in front of it. Didn't say anything at first. Just looked. I stood behind him, suddenly uncertain. It's not finished. I don't know if it's any good. I just kept thinking about that night. About how we almost didn't happen. He reached out like he was going to touch it, then stopped himself. Is this us? Yeah. He turned around. His eyes were bright. Reese, he shook his head. This is everything. 2 weeks later, the painting was dry. I signed it in the corner. Calder. My last name. The one my mother gave me. The one I've been signing my work with since high school. Lionel watched me do it. Then he said, what about Calder Vega? I looked up at him. What? For the signature. Calder Vega. Or Vega Calder. Whichever sounds better. We're not married, I said. Not yet, he said. But maybe someday. And when we are, I want people to know we made things together. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just kissed him instead. A month later, a delivery came. Small package, nothing fancy. Inside was a nameplate. Simple metal, the kind you'd stick above a doorbell. Calder Vega. Lionel held it up. Too soon. Probably, I said. He smiled. Want to put up anyway. We taped it above the buzzer. Not permanent. Not yet. But definitely staying a while. From the street below, someone honked. Life continued in its messy, beautiful way. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was just here, with him, beginning.